Welcome to the second section of third unit of molecular biology paper. Today's topic is going to be sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. It is otherwise known as autonomous nervous system. When you see as a recall about the nervous system can be classified into central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. And this peripheral nervous system can be further subdivided into afferent division and efferent division. The efferent division is going to contain autonomic motor nervous system and somatic motor nervous system. Within this autonomic motor system, we have sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions. So that is what we are going to now concentrate. Okay, so that is what autonomous nervous system. So apart from the central nervous system, there is another nervous system which is known as the peripheral nervous system. This peripheral nervous system is going to transmit the signal between the central nervous system and the receptors or the effectors in all of other parts of body. There are about 43 pairs of nerves are present in the peripheral nervous system. Of these, 12 pairs are contributed by cranial nerves and 31 pairs of spinal nerves are present in the spinal cord. The 31 pairs of spinal nerves are designated by the vertebral levels, where it is present, where they exist. Like that, it is called as cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral, and coccygeal nerves. So depending upon the locations. The 12 pairs of thoracic nerves are associated with the chest and upper. That's why it is called as a thoracic region. The cervical region nerves is going to provide the organs which are present in the cervical positions. Sacral region is going to contain the nerves to provide for the sacral region. So that is how the 31 pairs of spinal nerves can be divided into cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and sacral and coccygeal regions. Okay, now we will see about this peripheral nervous system. This peripheral nervous system is again divided into efferent and afferent. So efferent means what? The spinal nerve which is going to deliver, it's going to provide the information from the central nervous system to the tissue or organ is known as the efferent. Afferent means it is going to receive the informations. We can clearly get it from the previous slides. That is what I mean by afferent and the efferent. So afferent neurons convey information from sensory receptors at the peripheral endings to the CNS. So afferent is going to inform the CNS, whereas efferent is going to provide an effect on the terminal organ. So efferent is going to communicate informations from the brain to the organ. Afferent is going to transfer information from the organ to the brain. So it's like a receptor. Which one is an afferent? Efferent is like a motor. It is going to do a function. Okay, so this efferent division, the efferent division is going to execute the motor function. So this is further divided into two types. One is known as a somatic nervous system. Another one is known as an autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system is nothing but the system which is going to provide nerves to the skeletal muscle. The remaining nervous system which is going to provide motor function to the smooth muscles, cardiac muscle, glands, and other gastrointestinal parts, they are all comes under the category of autonomic nervous system. Okay, the somatic is only the efferent division which is going to provide nerves to the skeletal muscle, whereas the autonomic nervous system means the nervous system is going to provide nerves to skeletal muscle. Apart from skeletal muscle, it is going to provide, the autonomic nervous system is going to provide nervous system to smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, and other glands. Okay, so this is about the autonomic nervous system. So autonomic nervous system is the nervous system which is going to innervate the nerves except the skeletal muscle, the other organs, tissue parts of the body, gastrointestinal tract, urinary bladder, cardiac muscles, sweat glands, salivary glands. So they are all comes under the category of autonomous nervous system. If this nervous system is not function well, we might have different diseases like muscular dystrophy, Side-Drager syndrome, Parkinson's disease, even diabetes. If the insulin is not produced properly, if the insulin secreting organ is not properly stimulated by the nervous system, it may not produce certain hormone like insulin, so which may lead to diabetes. So like this, autonomous nervous system will play a vital role in our body for the normal functioning of the system. This autonomic nervous system is going to divide into two categories. One is known as the sympathetic nervous system. The other one is known as the parasympathetic nervous system. And then there is a small group of nervous system of this autonomous type that is going to provide the nervous system to the gastrointestinal tract, but is only a particular region is considered, so it is not that discussed very much about this enteric nervous system. So we will talk mainly about sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. The word clearly indicates sympathetic. The sympathetic division actually responsible for showing, expressing and feeling. So it's going to express, the feelings can be expressed only by the stimulation of this sympathetic nervous system. Finest example is fight, flight, fright response. Whereas the parasympathetic division is going to be responsible for the behavior of body in the rest conditions during the digestion. So the digestive things are controlled mainly by this parasympathetic nervous system. It is quite contrary to the sympathetic nervous system. So this is the diagram which clearly indicates how this sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system is going to function. So as we know, autonomous nervous system is a part of a peripheral nervous system, so it is going to present out of the spinal cord, out of the brain, they are going to function. You can see this, the spinal cord regions will have brain stem, then spinal cord starts. The spinal cord will have cervical region, thoracic region, lumbar region and sacral region. So the sacral region is going to have 5 division, lumbar region is going to have 5 division, thoracic region will have 12 division and cervical region is going to have 8 divisions. Okay, so these nerves starting from the cervical region to the sacral region is mainly contributed the sympathetic nervous system. The brainstem region, cranial region, the cranial region as well as the sacral region is going to contribute for the parasympathetic nervous system. So cervical, thoracic, lumbar and part of the sacral region, they contribute the sympathetic nervous system. The cranial, brainstem part as well as the sacral part, they are going to contribute mainly for the parasympathetic nervous system. So now we will see about the sympathetic divisions. As I earlier told, the sympathetic nervous system is going to be used for the expression of feelings. The axons of the sympathetic preganglionic neuron. So when you say about this sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, we should talk about the ganglion. The nerves before the ganglion is known as the preganglionic neuron. The neuron which is present after this ganglion is known as the postganglionic neurons. So if it is present in the sympathetic nervous system, it is called as a sympathetic. If it is present in the parasympathetic, the ganglion is called as a parasympathetic ganglion. Okay, so that is how in the sympathetic division we have sympathetic paravertebral ganglion. That is the ganglion which is present parallel to the spinal cord. Okay, so these ganglions are interconnected by a sympathetic chain. From this ganglion, the neuron will goes and binds to the respective tissue. You can see here the nerve which comes out of spinal cord to the ganglion is known as the preganglion neuron. The neuron which moves away from this ganglion is known as sympathetic postganglion neuron. You can see this. There is a formation of superior cervical ganglion in the sympathetic nervous system, which is going to provide a postganglionic neuron to the lacrimal gland and eye. They also provide the neuron to the nose, nasal cavity, olfactory glands. Then it also provides a nerve to the salivary gland. Which one? This sympathetic preganglionic neuron of the cervical region. So 1, 2, 3. The 3 cervical segments will have a paraganglions that is going to provide the nerve to this lacrimal gland, eye, olfactory glands, and salivary glands. Then there are middle cervical ganglion. This middle cervical ganglion is going to provide the sympathetic postganglion neurons to heart and liver. Sorry, hearts and lungs. Which one? Middle cervical ganglion, which contributes around 4, 5, 6, 7 cervical regions. Okay. Then there is an inferior cervical ganglion, which is also going to combine with the postganglion neurons of middle cervical ganglion, and which will supply its nerves to the heart and lungs. So since these organs, say heart and lungs, usually present in the cervical region, that is why the neurons is going to contribute from the cervical region ganglion. Middle ganglion, superior cervical ganglion is going to provide the nerves to the organs which are present in the head, that is eye, or in the case of salivary glands or olfactory glands. So the cervical region contributes the nerves to the organs which are present in the head as well as the cervical region. Then thoracic nerves, they are also going to have ganglions which are known as the sympathetic ganglion. The sympathetic ganglion is going to provide nerves to different organs. The pre-sympathetic ganglions forms celiac ganglion. The celiac ganglion is going to provide the nerves to spleen, stomach, and then the intestinal part, and to the kidney. Which one? Celiac ganglion. Then superior mesenteric ganglion is there, and this mesenteric ganglion is going to provide nerves to the lateral part of intestine, that is cecum part of intestine. Ileum jejunum, we know, no? The later part is known as the jejunum part of intestine, is consists of the nerve which is known as the postganglionic sympathetic neuron, which is arised from the superior mesenteric ganglion. So this is going to cover the end region of thoracic part and the starting region of the lumbar part. So the lumbar region is also going to have a postganglion neurons which is going to connected by this inferior mesenteric ganglion. This inferior mesenteric ganglion is going to provide the nerves, the postganglionic sympathetic neurons, to the large intestine. Almost it is near to the rectum. And they also provide nerves to the urinary bladder. Okay. Then this completes the sympathetic nervous system. Next we have to see about the parasympathetic nervous system. I already told you the parasympathetic nervous system is going to contain mainly two regions. One is known as the cranial and sacral. So it is known as the craniosacral division, which is another name for this parasympathetic nervous system. Preganglionic neurons are usually located in several cranial nerve nuclei, 3, 7, 9 and 10. And in the IML of sacral spinal cord, they are all going to present. The cell bodies in the Edimer-Westphal nucleus of the oculomotor nerve project to the ciliary ganglia to innervate the sphincter, constrictor of muscle of iris and ciliary muscle. That is, the nerve, the ganglion nerve is going to innervate the ciliary of eye so that you can control the movement of the eyelashes or irises. Okay, so neurons in the superior salivatory nucleus of the facial nerve project to the sphenopalatine ganglia to innervate the lacrimal glands and nasal and palatine mucous membranes onto the submandibular ganglia to innervate the submandibular and sublingual glands, salivary glands. In simple, the parasympathetic nervous system is going to provide the nerves to the salivary glands. You can see the cranial region, the brain stem and the cranial region is going to have the third region, seventh region, ninth region and 10th region. The third region is going to provide its nerves to the pupillary constrictor, constricting of the lens, ciliary muscles of the eyes. So this is what they are going to provide its ganglia. So you can see in the diagram, the ganglionic region is going to be a thick and thin color. So the thick continuous neuron is known as the parasympathetic preganglionic neurons. The dotted line is known as the parasympathetic postganglionic neurons. So this third region is going to provide its nerve to the eye for controlling the movement of the lens. Whereas the seventh region of this cranial nervous system is going to provide its postganglionic parasympathetic ganglion neuron to lacrimal gland and olfactory gland. The ninth cranial segment, which is going to provide its parasympathetic postganglion neuron and parasympathetic postganglion neuron to the salivary glands. Okay, so they are going to the cranial nerve 3, 7, 9 and 10. Of these, the 3, 7, 9 is going to provide most of the nerves to the regions which are present in the head. Whereas the 10th segment, which is going to provide its post-parasympathetic preganglionic neuron to the organs like heart, lungs and stomach, even in large intestine, small intestine. So a single cranial nerve that is going to from the 10th point, it is going to provide its parasympathetic preganglionic neuron to all these organs, major organs like heart, lungs, stomach, large intestine, small intestine. The post-ganglionic parasympathetic ganglion is usually present in the organ itself. Then the sacral region, which is going to provide its nerve to the urinary bladder as well as to the rectum. Similarly, the pre-parasympathetic preganglionic neuron is present in up to the organ. The ganglion is not present outside the organ. It is usually present in the organ itself. That is the difference between parasympathetic and sympathetic. In the case of sympathetic nervous system, we have the ganglion which are present in the outside the organ, outside the spinal cord. But in the case of parasympathetic nervous system, the ganglion, the junction, the synapse usually present within the organ, in the organ, target organ only who are having that particular ganglion formation. And then post and pre-synapses are usually presented in the organ itself. That is the major difference between parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. Okay, so you can see this is also other diagram, simple diagram, which is going to denote where the nerves will go from the cranial region. So 3 region is going to provide where, for 7, 9 and 10 is going to provide where its nerves, which can be easily identified. Similarly, the sacral region S2, S3, S4 is going to provide its pre-parasympathetic ganglion neuron to colon, bladder and sex organs. Similarly, the 10th neuron of the cranial region is going to provide its parasympathetic preganglion to the organs like the heart, lungs, stomach, small intestine and colon. So this completes the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. So how the nervous system is going to provide its nerves, and through the nerves they are controlling all these parts. So the blinking of the eyes to the release of feces, release of urine. That's why we are able to do some voluntary function. The urine are released as per its wishes. It is on controlled manner it is released. If you want to urinate, you can urinate. So it is known as the voluntary control. Defecation is controlled. The movement of eye lashes, the lens is adjusted by the nervous system. Some involuntary control is also achieved by this nervous system. Functioning of the heart, functioning of the lungs. The lung never asks you whether I am going to contract or relax. It will do by its own. Whether it might increase its function or it might decrease its function depending upon the requirement of the body. So these things are all controlled by this nervous system. Then we have a nice topic of reflex arc, the basic unit of integrated reflex activity. We might have some sudden change of role played by the neurons, the sudden reactions, sudden functioning of the neurons. So these type of reactions are usually known as the reflex arc. That is, the information is not usually reached to the central nervous system, and then the information supplied back to the target organ. Instead of that, the functions are completed between the spinal cord and the target organ itself. So such reactions are usually results in this type of reflex arc. If you see a reflex arc, it will contain a sense organ and afferent neuron and synapse, efferent neuron, neuromuscular junction, then the target organ, that is a muscle. So this is what a path for the reflex arc to occur. So here you see that there is no presence of central nervous system. Brain is not involved in this. Without brain, within the spinal cord itself, these functions can be achieved. So you need a sense organ which is going to act as a receptor, which is going to give the information to the afferent neuron. Then the neuron will give some informations. So that information reaches the target organ, say a muscle, through neuromuscular junction and efferent neuron. So when the sense organ generates a potential, the potential is transmitted as an action potential to the afferent neuron, and then it produces excitatory potential. Then the potential is again communicated through the efferent neuron as an action potential, and then it reaches the end plate and it creates a potential in the muscle cell, and then through the muscle cell also the potential is transmitted. So these reactions are known as the reflex arc. All or none responses are generated in the efferent nerve. When these reach the effector, they again set up a graded response. When the effector is smooth muscle, responses summate to produce action potential in the smooth muscles. In contrast, when the effector is a skeletal muscle, the graded response is adequate to produce action potential that bring about muscle contraction. So if it is a smooth muscle, you might have that responses will be summated by the signals. But it is a skeletal muscle, the immediate response is a contractions. Okay, so the stimulus should have that potential to induce contraction in the skeletal muscle. Example for this type of reflex arc, you can see that when a tick moves from one place to the other place in the dog started to scratch its skin. How the dog realizes without seeing the presence of a tick, the crawling of the tick, which makes the stimulations of the sense organ. Which is the sense organ? Skin. Okay, so when these sense organs are stimulated by the tick, then that is realized by the the neurons, say afferent neuron, then the efferent neuron, then the dog starts, the skeletal muscle contraction occurs, then the dog start to remove the tick by means of using its leg. So it is an example for a reflex arc. Okay, so when they jump from one place to another place, the dog is unable to identify it. When it crawls, it can easily identify the movement of the tick. So the crawling is a stimulus for this reflex arc. Even if you see a human being, we are identifying the reflex arc is a knee jerk reflex. Whenever we get injured, a tip of the finger or any body part, if any hot material touches your skin or part of a body, suddenly we remove that body part from that position. So this is the finest example for the reflex action. So the simplest reflex arc is one with a single synapse between an afferent neurons, and reflex occurring in them are called monosynaptic reflex. If more interneurons are interposed between afferent and efferent neuron, then it is called as a polysynaptic reflexes. Okay, so when a skeletal muscle with an intact nerve supply is stretched, it contracts. The response is known as the stretch reflex or myotic reflex. So because of that, the muscle is going to stretch. So that is why the reflex is known as the stretch reflex or myotic reflex. The stimulus that initiates this reflex is the stretch of the muscle, and the response is contraction of the muscle being stretched. The sense organ is a small encapsulated spindle-like or fusiform-shaped structure called the muscle spindle. The stimulus is going to be arised from the muscle spindle located within the fleshy part of the muscle. The impulse originating from the spindle are transmitted to the CNS by fast sensory fibers that pass directly to the motor neuron that supply the same muscle. The neurotransmitter at the central synapse is glutamate. So the thing which is going to communicate the nerve impulse transmission here is a neurotransmitter is glutamate. The stretch reflex is the best known and studied for a monosynaptic reflex and is typified by the knee-jerk reflex. Okay, so knee-jerk reflex is an example for this monosynaptic reflexes. So this is how the autonomous nervous system as well as the nervous system provides and controls the functioning of our body. So with this I would like to conclude the autonomous nervous system presentation. So if you have any questions, you can contact me through mail id sivabayo@gmail.com or through phone 9865866168. I will give the answers through either mail or through phone. For the preparation of these presentations, we used books like Medical Physiology by Gannon and Guyton, Wanders, and Color Atlas of Physiology is also used, and Human Physiology by Fox is also another book which is utilized for the preparation of these presentations. Okay, so you can also refer these books to gain knowledge about this nervous system. With this, I conclude the presentation of second section of third unit of physiology paper. Thank you very much.